Being a fan of this series for so many years, I was really skeptical when I heard this was going to be Americanized. Of course, due to the fact that live-action adaptations usually don't do very well, especially when they're American. Obviously, I'm talking about the American live-action version of Death Note that's on Netflix right now. They did do a good amount of things to try and make it more American. You know, changing Light's last name to Turner. It's set in Seattle instead of Japan. A couple other things. I mean, I'll go into it later. But, you know, I'm hoping that it's a faithful adaptation, but, you know, I have my fingers crossed. The plot is loosely based around the source material. Light Turner is a high school student that stumbles upon this mysterious book called a Death Note, and it has the power to kill anybody if you put their name into the book. Light then meets the owner of the book, a Shinigami named Ryuk, and basically takes it upon himself to start killing criminals and be a god, feeling he's doing the right thing cleaning up the streets of Seattle and many other places at the same time. Which causes trouble, obviously, which causes him to become investigated by a famous detective only known as L. So it's really just a game between, you know, L trying to figure out and stop Kira, and obviously Kira wants to try and stop L from figuring out who he is. If you notice I used the term loosely, I meant that due to the fact that they changed so many things that really made no sense to me. For starters, Light is supposed to be like extremely intelligent, strategic. He's always like 10 steps ahead of everybody, just in case to make sure he never gets caught, you know, being Kira. And the Light they portray in this movie, he's supposed to be intelligent. He kind of is sometimes. But for the most part, he's just stupid. And I don't get it. He just acts like a whiny teenager most of the time and makes no attempts to cover his tracks. Like, he literally just sits in the gymnasium with his Death Note, just reading it while he's in the bleachers, while all these people are in the gymnasium playing, like, sports of some kind. Just reading it, you know, reading all the rules. And he's making no attempts to not get caught. It's like, why would you not, like, try to hide that you're using this thing? You're supposed to be smart. Like, you didn't even think it was that big of a deal until Mia walked up to you and asked you what this Death Note was. Not only that, but he also just reveals everything about the Death Note to her, that he's only talked to her, like, once or twice before. Like, you're just supposed to trust this person after you just started killing people with this thing? He really just got kind of lucky that the girl ended up being, like, a huge psychopath like he is. And most of her characteristics in the movie are what Lights are supposed to be, since she's smart and covers her tracks and covers his tracks for him, since he's not, you know, as intelligent as he's supposed to be. Oh, and for other changes they did for this movie, Light doesn't have a sister anymore, and his mother's dead, and it for no reason, just other than the fact that he kills the guy that killed her later on in the movie. And it's not even his first kill he uses the Death Note for. He kills, like, this stereotypical bully that beat him up and, like, beats up women. But he's, like, in height, like there's no repercussions for it. He just is, I guess, allowed to just beat everybody up and just Death Note. It works. I do think they did a pretty good job in this movie with Ryuk, just because Willem Dafoe gives a really great performance. And the effects are pretty solid. I mean, Netflix, I mean, it's not too terrible. And he's in the shadows a lot anyway. But I really enjoyed his character. It's just disappointing he's not in it enough. He's in it a fair amount towards the beginning once he's introduced. And then after that, he kind of just spontaneously shows up for cameos throughout the movie. And I didn't like that just because of the fact that he's such an integral part of the anime and the manga. Because he's kind of like comic relief in a way. And I enjoyed that from the manga and anime. But oh well. I also like Lakeith Stanfield as L in this. I mean, I knew that going in because I think he's a really good actor. So I might be a little biased there. But he gets all the mannerisms and acts how L I would expect would act. So, I mean, at least towards the end. I mean, not until the end. I mean, like, it gets a little too ridiculous, and you kind of need to, like, tone it down a little bit. But other than that, like, it was a fine performance. Another thing I really just didn't like was the way this film was written. Like, they just pick and choose bits and pieces of the whole manga and try to just streamline this plot. And it just doesn't really work that well because they try to just speed it along. And it makes no sense because they just leave out parts that are needed. There's really, like, no build-up or suspense at all between Kira and L's, like, big showdown, really. You know, since they try to be friends with each other, it's kind of like a mind game thing. You know, Light wants to figure out, you know, L's name so he can kill him, and L wants to figure out, you know, the best way they can catch him, you know, prove he's Kira. There isn't really any of that here. It's kind of just like in this, he knows for sure that he's Kira, and Light doesn't really even deny it, and he's just like, okay, well, good luck proving it. Speaking of more on the writing, they add, like, little twists in this to try and explain things after the fact, and they don't even explain them that well, and most of the time it's just like, okay, well, that was kind of dumb. Like, you'll see something and wonder why it happened, and then as it's happening, you know, you'll be like, oh, well, flashback here, this is why this is happening right now. It's like, why? Like, that's still stupid. My opinion for this is pretty biased, just due to the fact that I've been a long-time fan of this series. So I actually am curious how long-time fans of the series are going to react to this, since they probably don't have as much of an attachment. I am curious, so definitely let me know. But to rate this film, I'd have to give Death Note a D-. Since I do like Lakeith Stanfield and Willem Dafoe's performances, this movie isn't like a total loss. But if you are like a really big Death Note fan, just stay away from this movie. It's really not worth it, and you're just gonna get annoyed, just like I am, probably, I don't really expect there to be a sequel to this, but they do give you sequel bait at the end, so that's also annoying. Just give you a heads up right now. Anyway, that's my review for Death Note. I stayed up very late to do this, so feel free to leave a like for me. Leave a comment as well. Feel free to talk about this movie. Subscribe as well, because I suffered through this at this hour. But yeah, until next time, I'll see you guys later.